This is June the 16th of 2022. I'm here at the Marshall Public Library representing the Friends of the Marshall Public Library. My name is Damian Macy, and I have today for an oral history interview Mr. Tom Murphy. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to him and let him tell you a few things. Tom, you're on.
All right, Damian. I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, September the 3rd, and it was actually Labor Day of 1951. To George T. Murphy and Jean Levitt Murphy. And my mother was the one that left modern facilities in a small town, running water, indoor toilets, to marry the love of her life. She went to an outhouse and had to hand pump water to take into the house, and it was interesting that that's because she loved him. You know, that's what they got married for. It's pretty interesting. But
did she ever say, "Gee, why don't we move to town and still keep the farm"?
I don't know that she ever said that, but I'm sure that the comments. I'm sure that she might have wanted to go back to town once in a while. But they grew together, and she became very instrumental in the whole family atmosphere, not just the farming atmosphere. But she was very instrumental in our lives as we grew up. And then I had a brother come along 5 years later, Brian, and all seemed to be well. And then 12 years later, Mom and Dad informed Brian and I that we were going to have a little baby brother or sister, which we weren't too sure about all that. But as she grew up, of course, I left the house, so I wasn't part of that. But of most of her growing up, her and Brian were pretty intimate in that relationship. And
what was her name?
Mary Ann. It's now Schaefer, but yeah, Mary Ann. So with that, we lived on a livestock farm. We farmed old-fashioned ways. We farmed for a big share of our farm was for the Tarble family that we farmed for, and then my grandfather had a livestock farm and learned how to milk a few cows, and I started my career farming as a young man with my granddad, renting his ground for $35 an acre cash rent, which he seemed to think he was giving me a good deal. But and we raised hogs together and livestock together, and then but I had a career in sports in high school growing up. We had of course, there had the city kids and the country kids, which had a lot of good friends in town, but they seemed like they had an awful lot of more fun than what I thought they should have because I had to work.
I'm just going back at that time with the farm. Do you remember what the price of, say, corn and beans were?
Well, I remember one time my dad sold corn. He engaged corn, contracted corn for like $1.70 something, and it never got below $2. So his marketing skills, he seemed to think might have lacked something. And the soybeans were in the 3s and 4s. They were just almost just a tad bit over twice what the corn was. But we didn't raise a lot of soybeans back then. We raised more corn, continuous corn. And back in those days, we plowed everything. We watched the evolution. If you didn't moldboard plow it, you couldn't raise a crop. Now that was just a fact, but we thought back then. And then we went into the evolution of maybe the bean stubble didn't need to be plowed. We could disc it or field cultivate it, and we did more fall plowing. It was just great to see that evolution as it changed and moved, and hybrids changed, and then we watched the coming of the private industry in the modern time of soybeans. Went from the Publix to a lot more money went into the breeding program, and it changed our world again. But
How about fertilizer and chemicals at that time? What was your dad's opinion of fertilizing?
well, fertilizing, we did the old-fashioned bust the bags and put them so he could plant. We'd do that before school, put them in a wagon so that he could auger them into the planter. So we used starter fertilizer, plus we broadcast, and we did the soil testing. My grandfather, my mother's dad, had the first soil testing lab in Clark County in his basement, Temple Levitt. And he always had the sign out in his little side yard there. Actually, it's where Keith Burton lives now. But the sign out there is Clark County soil testing. With the old litmus paper, and I mean, I learned a lot about science that Mr. Hope didn't teach me yet, in junior high. But that was in the early '60s, probably early '60s when he did that.
When you were on the farm as a young man, what were your chores that you had to do?
Usually, of course, that's the nice thing about being in sports. I could get away with not having as many chores to do. But of course, I was in 4-H, so we always had my stock that I had to take care of. But I was in charge basically when a few winters Dad worked in town, to pay the bills. It was pretty tight back then, and I had to make sure that the water tanks were full of water, and the hogs had feed, and that the fire, we just had coal oil burners underneath that they were full and burning, so that it didn't freeze up, because it just went downhill after that if that didn't happen. But so I just had, and usually part of it was helping Mom a little bit, I had to go burn the trash, the little things that, you just understood. There wasn't a lot of discussion about things back then, this was your assignment, this is what you did. And once in a while when it got out of hand, wait till your dad gets home. And we always knew what that meant, whether you had company or not. And then there's a few times Mom just had to take things into her own hands and surprise us.
And she did her job better?
And she did it well.
Does she can a lot? And they had a garden, I'll bet, and those kind of things.
Absolutely, they did. Of course, they lived just up the road from my dad's mom and dad, because my dad's dad, they farmed together, worked together, milked cows together, and had a beef cow herd. And so Grandma was always big about canning, so that's Mom got all that right out of the gate, and can and froze products, and had chickens. I think maybe if I find the pictures, but a little picture of Tommy squatting down in the kitchen floor with a Quaker Oats box that we just brought eggs home from Grandma's house, and they seemed to be nice little yellow yolks all around Tom as he picked them out and dropped one of them, and it looked like it was fun, I assume. That was one of the times that Mom took things into her own hands and took care of that before Dad got there.
You didn't have anything. You didn't have scrambled eggs that night.
No, yeah, I done scrambled them. But yes, you did. We always, and sweet corn was a big deal. We'd raise sweet corn, freeze corn, and usually that freezing of the corn, that was always a family thing. You got together. We used to bring it in town to my grandma and grandpa's in town, and they shucked the corn early in the morning. Mom said it's the sweetest early in the morning when the dew was on. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we did all those things, and I think that was, and we had, the milk, and took the ladle and gave them the cream off of it. You had cream, and, still remember even after I got married, I think our first cooking set had a grease container with a screen in it, and had salt and pepper, and today, that's maybe the reason we have cholesterol. I don't know, but yeah, But that was, we always had a garden, and they were, and Mom was, she was instrumental. She did all the spraying. It was a little unusual, but it had a Super M and a nice trailer sprayer, and I can remember, he filled everything up, took care of things. Mom went out. She was in charge of spraying. You think about all those things that today we sprayed. We used to ban a little fertilizer, banned chemicals on the planter, and then we went to the atrazine. We stepped up in the world when you broadcast atrazine and some Princep, and in fact, I can remember a time when it was sprinkling rain, and Dad and his cousin Billy Murphy were sitting in the truck watching Mom out there in that drizzling rain, trying to get that tank unloaded because it always set up. You had to get it sprayed off. So instead of taking her place, it was her job.
And I kind of derailed you a little bit, Tom. You started to talk about school, and you can go on with that. But there were not any school buses at that time either, were there?
Yeah.
Oh, you did have school buses. Okay.
Yeah, we had school buses. Now, I think it was 50. I was real young. It's 57, 58. Of course, it's gravel roads, and the Mill Creek Bridge back then, just to the west side where Mill Creek Lake is now.
Yeah.
The road was so bad, you couldn't traffic through there in a car or a bus. And so Lawrence Lycan and Wayne took one of their hay racks, and they built some benches in it, enclosed it, and put a 730 tractor on that. And a carryall came out on the west side of the creek, came around Route 40 and out to our neighborhood. And they picked all of us kids up, took us to the top of the hill, right where the Mill Creek Park entrance is today. We loaded onto that wagon, and that tractor drove us down through the mud and up the other side, and the school bus picked us up on the other side.
So you did come in town to Marshall for school?
They had already closed the rural schools.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started at the old high building, the administration office now, in kindergarten. That's where I started. And I was one that, since I had a grandmother in town, a place to go, I got to go the half days. So, country kids went every other day because we had to ride the bus a long day. So I had privileges because I at least have family in town. But in school, I didn't get away with much because my aunt, also Mom's sister, taught school. So Mom knew more about what I did at school before I got off the school bus.
Oh, man.
And always would ask, "Is there anything you need to tell me?" Not that I know of.
Left it open. Huh? Oh,
Yeah.
What was your aunt's name that was a teacher?
I'm sorry.
What was your aunt's name that was the teacher?
Ann Kyle.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought so. I wasn't sure.
Ann Kyle. Yep. She taught third grade. I thought I should be in her class, but she's, no way. Her mom says, "You're not being in her class." She said, well, she was right.
Do you remember some of your early teachers?
Yeah, I had kindergarten was Titus. I'm trying to think. Gail Titus's mother.
Yes.
Alice.
Alice.
Alice Titus was a kindergarten. First grade was Miss Fetters. Mrs. One was Mrs. and one was Miss.
Ruth Fetters.
Ruth was my first grade teacher. Gee. Oh.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. Norton, Jane Norton was my fifth grade teacher, and then we went to sixth grade. We went out to the girls' gym upstairs above, one of the, I think maybe it used to be an arts room, but Mrs. Wall, our basketball coach at the time, high school basketball coach, his wife was our sixth grade teacher. And of course, then we transitioned into junior high.
Is there anything in particular in that interim period of, say, fifth, sixth, seventh grade that you really remember? That's a boy, a zinger in your mind.
Well, we always thought all the teachers were old, but we had a couple of real young, awful good-looking ladies that did it really. The boys still talk about it at class reunions, once in a while when they get to talking about things. But that and Mr. Wiest, he was a basketball coach. We had a fair little, of course, that was back when we were the Rams and had heavyweight and lightweights instead of seventh and eighth. There was little kids and big kids, depending, things had changed. But yeah, and we started forming the competition between the schools then, the rivalries and stuff. Yeah, that was probably, and that's when culture, we started getting a little culture, to our lives. And probably one of the most memorable, I think it was, it was in November '63. We were in Mr. Thompson's, or I was in Mr. Thompson's, I think it was drafting. We took a 9-week section, we go over to industrial arts, sitting in his room, and when it came over the loudspeaker that President Kennedy was shot. And that just locked me, that's one of those impacting things. That was probably one of them, has always stuck out over the years, but
I've heard that is one of the few events where just about everyone remembers where they were or what they were doing.
Yeah, he was America's president, and that was, well, it's tragic, tragic. But yeah.
What was your favorite subject in high school?
Oh, I enjoyed ag. My favorite subject was probably sports. I enjoyed competition, and I enjoyed playing basketball and football. We had great teachers. My experience, of course, my senior year, there was 3 of us, David Reardon and Denny Lau. We were school photographers. We had photography back then, and J.R. Hornbrook, retired math teacher, that was he came over and he was the supervisor of that.
Okay.
So we learned how to, all the processing of making your own pictures. We took all the class pictures, we took all the club pictures, and we had a master key to the world.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we had because if you had one key, you could get in every door in that building. And not that we abused any of our privileges, but
did you develop your own pictures then too?
Yeah, we had a dark room.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we developed one, and our yearbook there of 67 to 68, 69, 68, 69. They had all of those pictures were taken by the professional photographers at Marshall High School.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many years. I don't remember how many years Mr. Hornbrook did that, but there was just a couple more years after we got out, and he finally quit. Well, Jim Markle kind of took up photography when he started teaching there, and yeah,
that was his thing, really.
Yeah, it was. So he kind of became, but I don't know if they ever had the old dark room like what we had, and developed everything. Things were changing. These were the big old cameras, and set the aperture and all that stuff. It was.
Yeah, you take a picture and
it's
there.
It's there. You're right. And but we learned a lot, and got a little free time once in a while, out of activity period or.
Did you by any chance take up photography as a hobby or anything there?
No, it was just a season in my life, and it is even like my wife Sally says, she back then she went down and played for funerals, played the piano. We did things, you did more things. Of because we were trusted to do and come back just to, you know, you had the honor system. I mean, that's just the way it was. And you reached that honor,
How did it?
and well, the thing, well, I did have an experience my senior year. We had one rebel in our football team that had sideburns, and back then, you know, we were close cropped, you know, and we just made the comment that somebody bring a razor, I'll shave his sideburns off for him. And actually, the young sophomore was bigger than me, and it really probably wasn't going to go very well. But you know, once you open your mouth, you got to follow up with it. Well, word came around that Mr. McNary found out that this activity might be going on right after lunch near the lunch room, and he came and broke it up and got a hold of Tom's back of his neck like this, and I don't think there was very many pounds per square inch. My feet were touching the floor as we went to his office. And of course I was reprimanded rather harshly, and what I didn't know till after I got out of school, that night was a Lions Club meeting, and my father was in Lions Club with Mr. McNary, and they had a real enjoyable laugh over that. The whole club did.
At your expense.
At my expense. But you know, it was.
So the sideburns remained then.
Yes, they did. They never. You know, he was saved by the principal, not the bell.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, it was. But I guess I jump around a little bit. But my grandfather, Mom's dad, of course, he died of stomach cancer. Fought it long and hard. He's one never took a drink, never smoked, and I just didn't understand. You know, I was a 14-year-old freshman. You know, that just isn't. You know,
Didn't have it.
I just was raised in church all my life. You know, but I just had a little conflict with that, trying to reason and understand it. I had to get older and a little more mature to understand that. But he was such a avid supporter of the community, and a lot of things that's happened in my life has been because of the legacy that was handed down to me. I didn't start things; I was handed stuff. You know, and you know, it's up to you to make choices to carry it on or what you do with it. But, he was a community man, a pusher, and my other grandfather would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it, and he usually didn't have a spare, but he would, you know, that's just who he was. So you know, those things were just something that was, you know, well, I still remember it 60 years later, you know.
And follow in their direction and their support.
That, well, and then of course, you know, Mom and Dad took off from there, and you know, you gleaned a little bit, and we, you know, so yeah, we were blessed. You know, didn't have a lot, but you're blessed with what you have. You know, we didn't have high expectations, and you just was taught basically to leave something better than you found it.
Oh, that's great.
And that's simple stuff, but it's, if we all would do our little part of that, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we deal with today.
What year did you graduate from school, high school in?
1969.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And probably, to be honest with you, the most influential high school individual, you know, and I still believe it today, that coaching is can be just as important as a good coach can be just as important as a good English teacher, a history teacher, a science teacher, a math teacher. It's just, if it's utilized, and we were blessed to have a football coach that made us do things and believe in ourselves that, you know, normally you wouldn't do. You wouldn't go to that. And he took us to achieve feats that we wouldn't have done normal. And you know, my best friend and others in that class, not everybody, but still think to this day of those moments that he, you know, he took us to a direction that you still think about, you know, well, what would Chuck say? You know, what would he do? You know.
Do you care to mention his name?
Chuck Cargill. Yeah,
Okay.
Chuck Cargill. Yeah. In fact, I still go to church. Well, Sean Stover, his wife Valerie, that's Chuck's daughter.
Oh,
Yep.
really?
Yep. 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 But yeah, he was very influential. I mean, there was a lot of good people. You know, I didn't have a bad teacher. I really didn't. Now, I might have been a bad student to some of them, maybe more so. And, I did always like Mrs. Elliott because she'd start down the list of names till she got to mine. She'd start with my mom, my dad, and start going down everybody's name till she got to Tom. Because she was. I think she only taught a couple more years after we were, in her class then. She retired in the early '70s.
She was my wife's favorite teacher also.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, she was good.
So with you graduating then, did you have great expectations on going out and capture the world? Or?
Well, I was going to farm the Clark County. I was going to farm all of Clark County, Yeah, I was going to be the mega farmer of the world. But I went to Lakeland College. And then, of course, we had, in that period of time, that was in the, we had the lottery system for the military, or as far as that goes, because the Vietnam War was, kicked up, was still running pretty heavy, and I ended up with I think about 20 some numbers over what they end up drawing in, so I never served. And then the summer between my first year in college, my second year in college, I got married and started raising a family, and then all the playtime was over and life became a little more serious.
Excuse me.
So, and that union brought on 4 children, and I stayed farming with my father, although he thought I should serve in the military and grow up a little before I got there. But yeah, we farmed together, and had oldest one was son Jeff, and then Gail and Carrie, and then Clint was the youngest one. I had 11 years between them. So we ended up 4 kids. I think about 17 grandkids, and I think I got about 11 great grandkids now. So
it's going to be quite a celebration, a reunion when you get them all together, then, can't it?
It is, and the real blessing about the family part of it is I've got one granddaughter at Fort Eglin down in Florida in the Air Force, and the rest of them all live in the Marshall area.
It's unusual.
Very unusual.
That many.
And a couple of them with the professions I thought they were taking, I was kind of thought they might, go to a bigger metropolitan area, but and that's where that legacy came from, not from Tom. It came from more my mom and dad. They were the go-to people, and these kids were growing up, neighbors and stuff, and so I think that really tied things together, and so. Did
you encourage any of them to be a farmer?
Well, the youngest one we thought was going to be. He was kind of daddy's boy, but it just didn't work out, and it just sometimes those things happen.
Yeah.
But you want them to find their niche. We just want them to just be the best at whatever you're going to be, and that's your choice. We thought we had opportunities. You could make opportunities, and so what we ended up doing, I was able to give each one of them a little piece of dirt that they could either build on. A couple of them built houses, and one of them we had a little piece of property that had a house, and so they redid it, and so they all live in. They call it Murphyville once in a while.
I like that.
Yeah, your ex-neighbor's the one that gave me a sign there. We took a picture. It was a Christmas picture, and he brought that sign out. He came out Christmas when they were home back then. And he's the one that came up with Murphyville. Population still growing.
Who's that?
Raritan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty tight. So
okay.
Yeah, we do things back and forth like that. So yeah.
Does this name of Murphyville bother any of your kids when they hear someone say that?
Not that I'm aware of. I think they, and they understand it. And we were raised pretty traditional, you know, and family values with my mom and my aunt. They, you know, you did certain things on Christmas Eve, you did certain things on Christmas, and these and Easter and Thanksgiving. As we got on, then we started finding our little niche, you know, and having family gatherings, the volleyball playing in the backyard, and you know all the things that go along with that. And it's interesting to see the grandkids and the kids now finding their, you know, their little group. And now as you get to be the oldest generation, it's a privilege to get invited to go participate.
That's interesting because sometimes kids say, "Oh, gee whiz," I guess they get a little bit aloof, and I really don't want to be associated with the family traditions.
Yeah, and I see that sometimes, and we get so diversified. Of course, sometimes our schedule becomes so busy today. We worked hard all the way, you know, as a kid growing up. I get it, but today we're so busy with activities. I mean, it's just too many choices.
I agree.
I mean, too many choices. But anyway, well, we can't come now because, you know, we got a travel ball team that we got to go with. You know, we have some even good faithful people come to church except when travel season's on, you know, and then because travel ball's on Sundays. You know, some things just don't. Everybody has to make choices and decisions.
Yeah, see, like some people now with several young kids almost need a computer program to keep track of their schedule.
Our calendar. Or mom goes with this one, dad goes with this one. Grandpa and grandma may end up going with the third one. You just never know. But
You mentioned one thing that I find kind of interesting too is your family and the association with church, and you've kind of kept that legacy going.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't start with me. There's no doubt, you know. And I had my dry bone years, and you know, back and forth. But it was very important, you know, that we have a routine, you know, and a faith-based part of it. And I mean, there was nothing better than to see all your kids and when they even grew up and started having their own families to worship together. And then for the reasons, you know, that was beyond my control, things started changing. And you know, but the important thing that we found too, and embraced, it was hard, but it was find someplace you're fed and go, and as long as you go, you know, it's, you know, that other was about me. It wasn't about as much about the Lord, although it's those who worship together sometimes stay together too. So so they found, you know, that each one of them, they found their own church that they are comfortable with, and grandson that's taken over the seed business, he plays drums in a worship band, and you know, so he's you know, they got some good foundations. They got some, or as I put it before, you know, I think they have some good strong root mass that will help them stay upright in the storms of life. You know, I mean, they're going to get whipped around, but when that storm comes through, we're going to still be standing. But and their mothers and grandparents have helped bring that, you know, to fruition. So
today, that farm root still is a part of your background and your family, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, you asked earlier, you know, what I was going to do to change the world or go to the world. Well, I knew I was going to be a farmer, a fireman, or a preacher.
That
was the three when somebody asked those questions back when we were in school, you know. Well, my kids already knew that I was a preacher because I lecture them all the time, so they threw that one out. The farmer was always and it was in my blood. Still is in my blood, and you know, to be successful at that, I think it has to be in your blood, because it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. You know, and I think that's probably what the kids, I don't think it was as much that they could drive a tractor, it was a lifestyle that was out there in the country. And you know, I've got I got a granddaughter and her husband are contemplating building a home out there close because they want their kids to grow up with the same advantages that they grew up with their cousins. Because there's always a gathering. I mean, it didn't take much to have a reason for a gathering when it's so close.
And usually a meal with it.
Yep, absolutely. Or down at Mom's, they go down there, ice cream sandwiches. There's always an ice cream sandwich in that freezer, And but yeah, there was always these things. But you know what? As life moves on, we started a little side business in '94. I went through getting married young, and we didn't weather the midlife crisis well, and my wife and I split up there in I think '89 or '90, and then in '94 I ended up marrying Sally, my current wife, and so she invested in the business. We started a seed business together in '94, and so that was our diversification, from the livestock business, because livestock business you either had to start getting big then or get out, and so that's what we ended up doing, and it's growing into something absolutely much bigger than we ever anticipated. Met a lot of good people over those 27 years, and then of course the grandson has taken over, and we sold that business to him in September last year. So him and his wife and little ones that's going to be their business, and or it is their business. And but backing up on that story though, as we were going forward in 2000. That's when Dad had his massive stroke in October when we were farming, and it rocked our world. Our world was pretty smooth and rolling, and things seemed to be all in order. And I think it was October 10th. He had a massive stroke, and they told us that he'd never walk again, he'd never talk, he would never be able to function. It was that bad. And it was Thanksgiving. The week after Thanksgiving, we brought him home for a trial run. We built a ramp, and they came and went through everything. And when next week he came home for good, and we had him for 7 more years.
Oh, that's remarkable.
And he drove a tractor. Now, mind you, it was just a couple of rounds, but I got him in a tractor, and he drove that tractor with me, and I do have some pictures of that. But
that must have been an exhilarating thing for you and him both.
Oh yeah, we bought a mule, like a little golf cart, with the all-terrain, but it had a pedal. He didn't have to do any, because he could use his left foot. I mean, he used that side of his body, and that gave him some independence.
Sure.
And they loaded him up one day and put him in it, and they called me and said he's coming to the field. And he was about 2 miles from the house, but he knew the field. He knew where it was. I didn't know at first that he was coming, but I see this thing coming down the road, and I got him in that tractor. He said, "Oh, no." I said, "Yeah, we will, one way or the other." We put him in a combine. We put him in a forklift on a chair. We pick him up
Sure.
there at the house when we were working close. Got him in there. Those were exhilarating things. But back to getting him someplace he wasn't supposed to go, according to the neurologists and all the medical people. Sally was pretty instrumental in putting a schedule together, and the teacher came out in her a little bit. We had a 4-hour schedule, 24 hours, 6 people a day. Around helping Mom, and in rehab, whatever he needed, and at the end of that 4 hours, he'd have a belly full of whoever was there. They'd leave, and a new one would come in, and that'd start all over again. He was just tickled to see him. That's just what was going on in his mind.
Excuse me.
So they had a place in Florida, and they missed 1 year of being able to go to Florida. That winter they didn't go. After that, we took them, got them to Florida every year for the next 7 years.
Good place to go.
Yeah, and it was always, they always looked forward to it, and the people down there were so used to them, and actually Dad passed away down there. They just sold their place on a Monday. Sally and I arrived on a Wednesday and took them out for their anniversary, 56 or 57, I forget which one it was. And we stayed a couple days with them. Then we went to a place we'd rented.
Great.
You know, I just remember Dad's expression when I walked in. Big smile sitting in that chair. That big smile was worth 100. Oh, just, you know. But the same thing was just the opposite when we left. He didn't want us to leave. But three days later, Mom called us and said Dad had a seizure, and she told him not to. He was going downhill, so it was time.
Excuse me. Tom, with your seed business,
Okay.
and going back, I guess maybe when you were a kid and farming, what's the difference in that environment? Seed with
Today,
it's a difference in night and day. I know.
absolutely. Of course, we were called wide rows back then. You know, we've narrowed up. We've done we treat things different. We've been from 36-inch rows to 30-inch rows to drills to 15-inch rows, back to 30s. Some kind of
Yeah, pretty close.
oh yeah, some variations. And when we started, of course, they call it bin run seed. You know, we buy a little certified seed off of Paul Boehner. Hey, Paul Boehner had a little
Oh, yeah.
certified seed out there. Buy a little stuff at the co-op, but you get a little something, you know, and then you keep seed back. You know, we just raise seed, and you know, you keep it 2 or 3 years. So it was all bin run stuff, you know, basically. So in the it was in the early 80s, I think, is when private entities started getting in the breeding program. This is all public, you know, at the university level. That was Illinois Crop Improvement Association. You know, they're the ones who did all the breeding.
When my dad had his grain elevator, I remember they used to sell little cans of inoculation,
Yep.
and I think that was used for the seed to
Yep.
to
Promote
Promote it.
nitrogen fixation. You know, the nodules. Oh yeah, we've had turpentine put on corn to keep the rodents away from the corn. You know, stir it in. Inoculant we put on beans, and some like cap tan. I mean, it was always, you get it on you, it's like you had grease on you. I mean, yep.
It didn't smell the best either, as I recall.
Right.
Some of it.
Right. So then it evolved, and then once the private sector got into it, then there was a lot more money influx into it, and so it changed. And you know, of course, we went through the period with the cyst nematode, you know, but they had the money to keep research, and so the improvement was quick. And then in the we started in 94, and I think it's 97, 90 someplace in the late 97, 98. Of course, then Roundup came in. You know, we started getting traits, and then the Stein Seed Company that we worked for, Harry was one of the early pioneers in going to South America and raising 2 crops. You know, the same. You take a small bag of seed down to South America and plant it as far as it go, and let that expand, and they call it an increase. Package it all up, we bring it back up here, plant it, and then cycle, and he'd get, I forget how many generations it took to get to when us farmers would buy it. It was about 6, I think, 6, when the process started. Well, they cut that time in half, and they could do 2 a year, versus just conventionally we're doing 1 a year. So instead of taking 6 or 8 years, you know, to get that perpetuated, they cut that in half. But once that started, of course, all companies go, and and of course, and the development with South America having, more production down there and stuff. So, yeah, it just changed. That's a whole another animal. And of course, going from open pollinated corn to the hybrid selections we got today with all the traits in them, the technology in our farming entities today is just mind-boggling.
You mentioned the word Roundup, and of course, right now it's kind of beginning to get a bad name, I guess, for cancer.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think if it's a little bit like atrazine was the first corn herbicide, and we still use it today. And the environmental people have tried every year trying to get rid of it because they could find it down. They think that's some of the detriment to the
Velsico?
No, down at New Orleans, where all that goes down there. It kills all the vegetation. There's nothing that grows in that area, and but it's just like modern medicine. We've had the abilities, instead of parts per million, we can test things now parts per billion. I mean, we just get so minute, and I think with the world that we live in today, with the abilities of science, the abilities of lawyers to interpret and read, and with all that, I think you could take anything and I could prove that probably too much of that could cause cancer.
Maybe that's those scrambled eggs we talked about. Right?
Yeah, too much of anything can cause something negative.
That's probably right.
And maybe, so I think being good stewards, we learned a lot. Over time, some of it was, I had a year, the skin fell off my hands. Just I grow a new layer and it just flake off. Well, it was some chemical that I had come in contact, and we didn't wear masks. We didn't wear.
You can still shake hands, okay?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the skin doesn't fall off anymore, and I don't have quite as many calluses as I used to.
A heck of a way to get rid of those.
But yeah, we have these. We didn't know any better. We just you did what you did. We didn't have basically the environmental people. I remember a landlord told me, he said that he read a Wall Street Journal article that said, beware, because the environment can't protect itself, so somebody will protect it.
Good way.
And then they went from the radical Greenpeace to three-piece suits and lots of money. So I think we find a balance. We find a balance. We have the technology. We wear masks, long sleeve shirts. We hands off induction systems. There was we had in '92 they started a ag program, with the Clark County kids in conjunction with the NRCS down at Martinsville. So they'd have a little study about farm safety and all that, and conservation. At school they get handouts and then they go someplace. Well, they come out to our place. We said yes. So they've been doing it, except for COVID, they've been doing it every year since.
Great.
And coming out there as fifth graders. And but the first time we came out, we had an induction system, and we were doing VRT, variable rate technology is what they call it today. Fertilizer, you test here and test here. This needs 100 pound, this needs 300 pound. You spread 100 pound and you spread 300 over here instead of, to get this what it needs, spread more than too much here. So we were doing it by hand. And Jeff was in environmental science at Indiana State, and his professor he started under retired. The new professor that took his place was a lady from Thailand. She had her BS degree in Thailand. She got her master's at Indiana State, got her doctor's degree in Indiana State, and then was mentored under the current head of the department. Never worked a day in the field. But you know, she was book smart and learned from him. He brought her out to our farm that year with her camera, and she had a premonition of what farming's like and what we did and how we washed our hands in chemical. I mean, she just had all these visions that she had made assumptions. And she told me that that was the best day of her life so far, because it opened her eyes up
I
to,
imagine it would.
you know,
Oh, goodness.
and I just thought, you know, how can anybody teach that's never done it? And I think that's a little fallacy of
Oh,
our
yeah.
system right now. You know, it's like kind of like you can't be a CEO of someplace until you've been a grunt. You need to work. You need to have those calluses before you
Oh, yeah.
can, you know, get your nails done. And I think that's what I think our teaching profession needs the same thing. You need to be in that field if you're going to be teaching something like that. But that's just a personal opinion.
Hitchhiking on that, there's still a ag program in the high school.
Absolutely.
I don't know I don't think they really call it agriculture, do they? It's something else.
Well, they have. It's of course. They've diversified that. Of course, they got small engines now. They got still got the industrial arts program, and of course they've got thanks to Mr. Forsythe, they've got the greenhouse that they get into horticulture side of things.
Horticulture. That's what.
In fact, our church, when Ashley just first got here, I don't even think she was married yet, but the kids came up and we tore out the old bushes and re-landscaped the church. So that was a project. They needed a community project, and it's women have become very important in agriculture and more dominant. You know.
Teacher here
Yep.
is a woman.
I think there's as many, if not more, teachers now. They're female in the ag field than there are male. And part of it is, you know, it's some of it's pay scale. You know, I mean, it is what it is. That doesn't make them bad, but it's more diverse too.
Oh yeah.
It's like 4-H used to be just for the country kids. You know, when I was on Extension Council, then the numbers weren't coming up. We were starting to go down. So what do? We start coming to the community. So we have a home ec group, and now we got them all commingled, and it's just one big group. And that was a change, you know. So you have a lot of these kids that get this opportunity, and of course, you know, like what Jerry's done down here, you know, that's just wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, it's wonderful that somebody can.
For such a small community to be able to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and give back. You know, it's give back.
And we see in the grocery store and everything, we hear about generic this and generic that and generic carrots and potatoes.
Now, are you talking about generic or organic?
Organic.
Organic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, organic.
Organic. What, in your mind, being in the farm and all, does that really mean a major difference?
It's for the rich, and then there's the rest of us.
That's my opinion exactly, but as
I think it's an endeavor. There's nothing wrong with the endeavor, because you know, for those, we'd never gone to the moon if they hadn't looked at the stars. You know, so you got to do things that you can glean some of that off of. Got Brian's son-in-law bought the old Staub farm. You know, the home place. Him and his wife, and they're very organic minded. So that's what they're doing. They're developing that, but you look at the prices of the organic when you go over to Terre Haute, and you look at that price there, and if you can afford it, you know, I mean but it gives you a choice. You know, people have those choices. Doesn't make raising for the masses bad.
We know some folks that, it's got to be the organic. No, we won't even consider this. And to me, it's a lot of maybe psychological.
Well,
but you're kind of answering my question. It doesn't make a lot of difference in the value of it to your body and all of this stuff. And really,
I'd say that there's more hype to it than there is the rest. You know, I don't know that there's as
You're
much
saying
data that proves that. But that's okay. I mean, if I have a choice and I can afford to have that choice, I think more power to you, as there's a supply. I mean, we do I went to Mexico once in my life, and I don't have to go there again. But I ate a piece of beef steak that I wouldn't have brought home. It's grass fed, and it was tough. I mean,
Good and chewy.
Well, you didn't have to have a very big piece because you spent the evening chewing it, or something to wash it down.
Yes, that's exactly right.
There's just and we get there are times we just like athletes with steroids. There's times that people push things too far, and it can be proven harmful. But most generally, it's that 10x rate that's going to get you. It's not the normal growth promoting rate or an antibiotic that when we were raising hogs, you had a 30-day window. You couldn't put that had to be clean, get it out of their system, and but usually when there's a need, somebody tries to fill that need, or there. So I'm all about choices and opportunities, but I just have to be careful if we mandate or if we just give choices.
John, Tom, it's been a great visit with you, and I'm going to kind of wrap up with a couple of questions.
Okay.
Number one, looking at your very interesting life and the involvement in agriculture, is there anything you can say I wish I had done differently?
Just one?
Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah. Damien, if I had to do over with again, I'd probably still screw up something. It probably wouldn't be the same thing. I wouldn't make the same mistake again. I risked in '74 buying ground, listening to people that, I paid on it forever, But I was the first generation to spend much money or to start trying to buy ground, and a lot. Or not a lot, but buy some. So I think that was the right move. It makes you focus, when you have to make that payment, you focus. I might have embraced technology a little quicker. If there's one thing, I was stubborn. I just worked hard and I found excuses not to embrace it and let Marianne embrace it, let Sally embrace it. I didn't worry about it. And then I got behind the curve, and now I don't have the ability to catch up. I don't have the capacity.
That's an interesting analysis.
That was probably the biggest thing. But it's been a great ride.
You've lived in Marshall all your life.
Yeah.
And you've had some experience of going, you said, to Mexico. Now, if you're in someplace else, maybe in another country, let's say Mexico, you said I'm from Marshall, Illinois. Marshall, Illinois, where's that and what's that all about? What would you tell them about our town and why you might want to visit here?
Well, I tell them, I said, you come to the breadbasket of America, where, if you want to eat a real beefsteak, you can come and get a real beefsteak. You want to get sweet corn, you can get real sweet corn. And one thing you can't find in a lot of east, west coast, a lot of places, when you go to, of course, you go to Mexico, you go to a big environment, as you don't find that. You can walk down the street and speak to somebody. I mean, if you spoke to somebody, they'd want to know if you're getting ready to pick their pocket or, kind of thing. And, it's the environment, place to raise your kids, a place to, I leave my doors unlocked. I leave my...
Boy, we better broadcast that. Maybe we better check that.
But I also got a gun.
Oh, okay.
but yeah, you don't. If you want a taste of what really life's supposed to be, this is a great place to do it. It's a great place to do it. Great community. You got a good school system. You got people that believe and care about one another. I don't know as many people. When I was growing up, I thought I probably knew 75% of the people here. Could call them by at least their first name. Now today there's more, different people, but I'm not in the loop as much. But anyway, that's what I would tell them.
Great, Tom. It's been a great visit with you. And I think these oral histories are not just for you or maybe even your family, but it's for somewhere down the line there's going to be some grandchild or something interested to hear what Tom Murphy had to say about his lifespan.
Yeah.
So it's been great visiting with you, and we really appreciate you taking your time out to do that.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege. Besides that, I couldn't